Hi, hello everyone. Joey Sparks here, and God's mercies are new again this morning.
This morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind.
Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, very important to understanding the rest of the book. So too is verse 4. John, to the 7 churches that are in Asia. That reminds us it was written to a specific people. If we're going to understand the rest of the book, this should always remind us, it was written to 7 churches found in Asia in this time of the first century. So it's a very strong grounding point. It's an anchor to help us throughout the rest of the book. We need to understand that any interpretation from this point forward must first have been something that would have also inspired and comforted them before it inspires and comforts us now today. So John's not writing to tell them what's going to happen in the year 1950 or 1945 or 1978 or 1992 or 2000 or 2020. None of that is in the book of Revelation because none of that was relevant to these first century Christians. Now, there are still plenty of things that were still future for them. Roman Empire hadn't fallen yet when this was written. Judgment Day was still future for them. It's still future for us. Our heavenly home, future for them. It's still future for us. But yet it was still highly relevant. It would inspire and comfort them and encourage them to remain faithful. So every interpretation must have a grounding. First make sense for them before it makes sense now for us. But we must also consider their historical background. How did they get there? What's the significance of Asia in the Roman Empire? And this area is highly contested. There are places in the world and places in our nation we call battleground states from a political standpoint, or swing states, as it's sometimes called. So there's a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of favors, a lot of projects that are done in those states that might not be done in strongly red or strongly blue states. Well, you've got some of that going on here in Asia as well. Emperor and the Senate and all these other people are kind of fighting with each other from time to time, and they'll use Asia as a pawn to be able to try to get what they want. So you've got emperor worship especially popping up in Asia around the time that this letter is sent to these churches in Asia. Well, what happens is it doesn't necessarily put the Christians at odds with the emperor, even though they would have not bowed to him. But what it does is it puts them at odds with other Roman citizens and even Jewish citizens, Jewish Roman citizens. So the Jews, having rejected Christ, would take advantage of these laws because the Romans did not require the Jews to bow down and worship the emperor. They were grandfathered in because they were there before the Romans came in. But by this time, the Christians had separated themselves from the Jews enough that the Romans viewed them as this new group, a new sect. So they were not afforded that same luxury. So the Jews then used that against the Christians. So emperor worship, something that's extremely important in the background of these churches and their instructions to them in the first 2 chapters. Also notice the importance of their temptations. All the things that they're dealing with or that they're warned about by John, we need to find some overlap, and the fancy word is contextualization. We find these being very real temptations now today, just as they were for them then. They were facing this external source of persecution, external conflict, external hostility. They were tempted to be complacent. Wealth, some of them were wealthy. They were vital key places of trade along the way. And so they were warned to not worship their money, not decide to be more about money than they are Christ. They're also tempted by the sins of the day to become more and more conformed instead of transformed by the word. And you'll notice especially there's several false teachers. There's also some of these meat offered to idol issues that keep popping up, like in 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians and in Romans. And then you've got sexual sin. That's a problem as well, especially in one of the churches. You think about our own culture. We've got purity issues and sexual sin issues, and we've got complacency that can crop up because of wealth and our own status. There's increasing external threats of persecution. Well, they have a lot of the same things, right? So we would be able to learn from their context. And whenever we see these passages moving forward, these visions about conflict and visions about beasts and dragons, all of those are somehow connected back to these churches and the issues they're facing. Whether it's their socio-political and historical backgrounds, whether it's their temptations, or whether it's their status before God, whether it's their complacency and trusting in idols and things of the world instead of God, all of that is the fabric that the rest of the book is painted upon. So anchor yourself in your mind to verses 1 through 3, but also verse 4, because it's written to the 7 churches in Asia. Hey, thank you for watching today. It's been a pleasure to spend these few minutes with you. And it's our prayer that God's timeless word will be on your mind all day today.
I woke up this morning.